Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Prime Live here on INX Prime DSTV channel 345. So this evening I'm delighted to be joined by a really distinguished guest in studio, Mr. Muddassar Ahmed, a distinguished British entrepreneur, thought leader specializing in strategic communications and intercultural diplomacy. He serves as the president of the Concordia Forum, a network of Western Muslims with an exclusive annual retreat now in its 16 years that convenes senior Western Muslim leaders across sectors. He's a managing partner at Unitas Global Advisory and also recognized as one of the 500 most influential Muslims and one of 1,000 London's 1,000 most influential people. Mr. Muddassar Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Prime Live.
Thank you for having me.
I see, the achievements, your profile is amazing. Tell us a bit more about yourself before we get into the meat of the interview.
You're very kind. Thank you for having me on your show this evening. So, I am essentially an entrepreneur, so social and business. So, in business, I run a business called Unitas Global Advisory, like you mentioned, and along with many other businesses. But socially, I run something called the Concordia Forum, as you mentioned. But I think the key thing that I've tried to do in my life is build platforms for better understanding and trust. Because trust is the currency for change that you need, and the ability to be able to build trust enables you to affect greater change, social change in the world.
So you mentioned the Concordia Forum. We know how important it's been in uniting Western Muslim leaders. How do you envision its role in fostering cross-cultural understanding in this polarized world we live in?
Muslims in Europe and North America have always been an underrepresented minority, often the victim of anti-Muslim hatred, misunderstanding, and denied access to many um, centers of higher education or higher echelons of corporate life. So many, many years ago, I felt it was important for Western Muslim communities across various divides to come together and work together and build trust with one another so that we can all succeed together. And that's why I set up the Concordia Forum. And the way I decided to do that was essentially to hold an annual retreat once a year that brought together senior political, media, corporate, artists, figures who would come together, spend quality time together, get to know each other, understand the policy issues facing them and also the challenges facing them in their wider societies, and then of course figure out a way to work together in a manner that wasn't top down but in a manner that generated trust and built bottom up.
I think it's very important, and you did mention how the Muslims are underrepresented minority, especially in Western Europe. In America, we do see Islamophobia throughout the world, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the Americas. From the Concordia Forum side, we know all the misinformation that's being spread. I know I follow it on social media, especially amongst right-wing British politicians with the so-called Islamification of Britain. How do you answer those questions and allay some of the, I don't know if they're fears, but allay some of the concerns that these people have been mentioning?
Well, I mean, this is I don't know how long I have to answer that question, but I'll say that when it comes to social media, the thing that I've realized is you have to challenge them back on social media. Like social people are spreading this sort of information on social media because often they're denied mainstream platforms to spread this information and they don't want scrutiny of their views. So I think therefore it's important that when people are spreading misinformation on social media, they are immediately challenged. And there is an immediate challenge and there is immediate debate that happens. To your broader point about anti-Muslim hatred, look, I think that these things are cyclical in the West. Before the Muslims faced this discrimination, before in the UK it was the Irish, before the Irish it was the Jews. And some would argue that the Jews, the Irish and the Muslims are all facing it yet still. Unfortunately, these are common things in society, they are recurring patterns. Even the African Americans will tell you about their long history and continuous struggle. So as we face these struggles, we need to find allies. How do you find allies? By building trust. One of the things that's inspired me about South Africa was how much was possible when you built allies and you united people in a common fight. And one of the issues, the most important thing I find, is holding a mirror up to another person's humanity. And this is very important. So I think that people that are spreading misinformation about them, about us, the most powerful thing you can do is actually engage with them, is actually find a way to hold a mirror up. From in the Islamic tradition, which has been very powerful to me, I'm reminded about a time where there was a woman who used to throw rubbish on the Prophet Muhammad every single day. When he would walk past, she would tip over and throw rubbish. One day, she didn't throw rubbish, and he asked why, because she was sick. So he went and met her. And I think that if you look at the Prophet's life and our religious tradition, having an emphasis on engagement, building trust, reaching out across the aisle, sitting down with people you may disagree with, without compromising your values, is very, very important. And that is, I think, fundamentally the long-term way to defeat Islamophobia.
At the beginning of your answer, I know it was a loaded question. You mentioned responding to the social media comments and that. One of your companies, Unitas Global Advisory, operates strategic communications and international relations. How do you use this company to navigate the complexities of advising clients and also advising Muslims on responding to these debates on social media, on mainstream media as well?
Look, I started this business 15 years ago to foster intercultural communications. We want to make the world a better place, create better understanding, enable cultures to speak to one another, and make the world safer for everybody. And so essentially, as part of what we do in this company is that we research heavily the issues involved, we advise on messaging, we advise on media strategies, we advise on event strategies, and we put together integrated approaches on how people can protect their reputations, advance their reputations, and sometimes, these things are essential in a crisis situation. When it comes to Islamophobia, I mean, it's not exactly what my business does, but I do think that many of the tools that I learned as a young activist in fighting Islamophobes have become very useful to me in my business life.
Moving, we know you're in South Africa for the next few days. How do you perceive the role of Muslims in South Africa in shaping global Muslim narratives? We know Islam is huge in Africa. North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, not so much, but in the north of Africa, towards Nigeria, even on the east coast of Africa, we do know the communities of Muslims are very large there. How do we get Islam in Africa, Islam in the West, to be a more united front in addressing all these narratives?
Look, Muslims have had an outsized impact in South African Muslims have had an outsized impact on the global consciousness. This is my first ever trip to South Africa, and today's my first day in South Africa. I arrived this morning, but I have learnt from South African Muslim scholars. I have interacted with South African Muslim art and culture and music, and incredible leaders that you have produced from this country. I mean, everybody from, like, as a kid reading Ahmed Deedat, right? Zain Bika, or dealing with some of the incredible, powerful liberation scholars that you've had, but also some of the ANC's leaders who were Muslim, people like Ibrahim Rasool, who spent time in prison, Ibrahim Patel. Like, these are all people that I've grown up reading about. And when we talk about South African Islam's impact, one cannot forget that the Indian liberation struggle, to a large degree, was incubated in South Africa. There was, I remember when Gandhi came here to South Africa, his main patron was a Muslim businessman. His main supporters were Muslim businesses. He was inspired by the inequality that he saw here, and he took that back to India. But we also know that South African Muslims have been at the forefront of global advocacy for Muslims all over the world. You have a dynamic, powerful community with an incredible business community, as well as a very good scholarly background, and of course very, very unique subcultures like Cape Malay culture, which is a very unique sub-Muslim culture. You also have African Muslim converts and their culture. So I'm just excited to learn about all of this. But believe me, you guys have had an outsized impact already.
You somebody who's just landed in the country, your enthusiasm for our country, especially at times when we as South Africans don't show so much enthusiasm for our own country. Thank you. And I think it's important that foreigners who come to South Africa realize what a big role Muslims have played in the country and what a big role we still can play in the country. Just as we about to conclude this interview, you've been recognized for your influence and leadership in Muslim communities. I mean, being one of the 500 most influential Muslims in the world is no small feat. I think it's an amazing achievement. Well done. But how do you balance advocacy for our own community while engaging with global institutions of different faiths?
Fascinating. I mean, look, one can be very powerfully grounded in one's own faith and contribute to society as a whole. I mean, I look at you as an example of that. I look at all the people I meet in South Africa, all the Muslims that I've met. I must have met at least 50 people already, right? And I look at how South African Muslims are very, very proud of their Muslim identity, yet working for the country and for the global good as a whole. And I think there's no contradiction in that. You know, when you break it down to the values that unite us, when you break it down to the values of our faith, I think, and you compare it to what's needed in the world today, I think it's a very powerful driving force for change. And so I see my faith as my guiding principle behind everything I'm trying to do in the world.
Muddassar, we've run out of time, but thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful time in the Rainbow Nation. And we just hope the next few days that you're going to be you achieve what you've come out to achieve. And I think the role that you're playing in the community and bringing people together to speak, I think it's very, very underrated, and I think it's long overdue and well done. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Muddassar Ahmed. Just speaking about the Concordia Forum, the Unitas Global Advisory, I think it's such important initiatives that he's taken. We've run out of time for this interview, and I think we really need to do a much longer interview with Muddassar. So hopefully if he has some time in the next few days, we're going to get him back into studio for a longer one.
With pleasure.
Okay, so you guys have all heard it live when Muddassar said he might be able to come back. To our viewers out there, thank you so much for your time. We're going to take a short ad break. Stay tuned.